What did I say? Let me see. Let me see. I will believe.
Osinachi, namnukwa, Osinachi, one man, Osinachi, Awachi, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
I'm saying that. Don't go that interesting funny. Not like this one, social funny. No, she land on your own. Can you come colonial? Like, not that you are not.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. Awachi, Osinachi, namnukwa, Osinachi, one man, Osinachi, Awachi, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Take the deep. Just send one. Here I missed the break. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be
be your show, no be that. Akwachi, Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi, one lemon, Osinachi, Akwachi, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. Akwachi, Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi, one lemon, Osinachi, Akwachi, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. Akwachi, Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi, one lemon, Osinachi, Akwachi, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Yeah, two people online already.
Huh?
Two people online
How
already.
many?
Yes.
Confirm the identity. I want to know whether one of the potentials is somehow.
Mo dúpẹ́ Ọlájúmọ̀.
Joshua, this.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, I'm no qua, Osinachi. One name man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, mama, Osinachi.
Look at this one, yeah. I just think that, yeah, I think that.
Itu additional yesterday. And another question. We're expecting It's now time for us to promote this intellectual activity in honor of our Professor Emeritus John Ishola Bewaji. This is the third panel. We'll be holding in his honor. I'm Rotimi Omoshilu from the University of the West Indies, Jamaica. My duty is to briefly introduce the presenters, and one of the presenters will take over from me because we also want to use this panel to honoring Professor Paul Ugo, right? He will take over the administration, quote unquote, of this panel for me. So I want to know if we have any presenter in our midst. We have two presenters online talking about Mr. Joshua Adebayo Adesina. Could you please text your mic? Mr. Dr. Professor Adeba, text your man. Hello,
Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, please.
Please.
Time for your presentation. What you need to do is to introduce yourself, your topic, and your university, please. Before you commence your presentation, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation so that we have enough time for discussion. Miss Jumoke, Ola Jumoke, are you there with us? Miss Modupe Ola Jumoke, are you? Hello, Jumoke. You are online, maybe you are not ready for us. So, Professor Ugo, kindly introduce yourself to the country and invite the first presenter.
Okay, yeah. By the way, I had no idea I was going to become the chair of this panel. So basically going to externalize actually. It's really, I heard it the time you had it too. So please forgive me if I seem a bit incoherent. Yeah, so my name is Paul Uko. I am a faculty member in the English language and literature University of Waterloo, Canada. And so a great pleasure to be here and to share this thinking space with the other five finalists who are going to be reflecting on the phenomenal work by a friend and mentor, Professor John Bewaji, who is undoubtedly plus global scholar. So the first presenter, I don't have a copy of the paper, but the first, yeah, presenter. Eric Grant. Well done. What is it? You're right. Right here. This one. So the first presenter is on. Is that Joshua? Is that Joshua Adebayo? Joshua here?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So the first presenter is by Joshua Adebayo, entitled "Safeguarding Heritage: The Role of Oral Traditions in Cultural Preservation." Joshua, I'm going to be ruthless about sort of enforcing time because we're five in number. We really need to keep it very short. So hopefully you can do your presentation in just 10 minutes. Okay, take it away.
All right. So can I go ahead, sir?
Yeah, please.
All right. So please, could you please allow me to share my screen?
Yes, please share. I'm just request to share, then I'm going to
yeah, it's telling me only the host can share.
You can make a request
in this meeting.
You can make a request. You can request to share.
Oh. Okay, don't worry. Let me just continue so I don't waste the time. Thank you. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Adebayo Adesina. I am an independent scholar. And my research interests are in African studies, digital theology, orality, and biblical preaching. I'll be speaking this afternoon on safeguarding heritage, the role of oral traditions in cultural preservation. Safeguarding heritage, the role of oral tradition in cultural preservation. Cultural heritage is the backbone of communal identity, and they are means through which traditions, beliefs, and historical narratives are passed down to the next generation from the former generation. Now, across diverse society, this heritage takes various forms. It could be monuments, artifacts, rituals, languages, and traditions. However, it has been discovered that cultural heritage is being threatened due to modernization, rapid urbanization, and shifting societal priorities. And in response to these challenges, there is a pressing need for intentional and sustainable efforts in order to preserve our cultural heritage in all its form. Now, because Africans are predominantly oral in their nature and culture, and they enjoy communication best in an oral atmosphere, oral tradition remains one of the ways through which their heritage can be safeguarded. And oral tradition serves as one of the oldest and most effective means of preserving and transmitting knowledge within society, even before the advent of writing. When a child is born, they don't teach the child to write. They speak to the child. The child learns to utter words first, and oral communication continues until the child grows to be ready to be enrolled in school. So oral tradition is a dynamic archive of knowledge. Permit me to say this in Yoruba. One elderly man says, "Tí àgbàlagbà kan bá kú, àmù ìmọ̀ ló fọ́." Now, let me just do a little translation that when an elderly person dies, it is like a well of wisdom just got broken. So these traditions include songs. I mean, the cultural heritage includes songs, proverbs, folk tales, epitomic allegories, and idiomatic expressions. Of course, the heritage could be either tangibles or intangibles. And in all of these, they are not merely means of entertaining one another within a cultural system, but they are vital tools for education, for preservation of historical consciousness, and even for governance. Now, oral traditions serve as repositories of indigenous knowledge. Unlike the written records, oral traditions provide a dynamic and interactive means of knowledge preservation, which adapts to societal transformations while maintaining cultural authenticity. Now, many oral traditions are deeply tied to the linguistic structures of indigenous communities and thereby preserving their dialects, idiomatic expressions, and linguistic nuances that might otherwise be lost. Many traditional healing practices are passed down through storytelling, chants, and apprenticeship under herbalists or spiritual healers. This knowledge encompasses plant-based remedies, spiritual healing techniques, and diagnostic methods. I remember one of those days when myself and my father was working on farm and I was tooling. My father just told me to hold on, that once he sees a leaf, he's going to give to me. I will hit the leaf and drink water and it will stop. He gave me the leaf. I ate it. I drank the water. I couldn't stool for 3 days. Of course, that may be one of the reasons medical practitioners will say herbs should not be trusted. By virtue of repeated use, I was able to know what amount of leaf to eat when such happen again. Now, many African societies also have griots, the oral historians, who preserve the histories of families, clans, and kingdoms, and they recount their stories to the next generation, even in the absence of written records. For instance, in the Yoruba culture, we have folk tales, we have oriki, that's praise poetries. These proverbs, they encapsulate centuries of wisdoms, which provides lessons on morality, resilience, social and communal values, such as patience, honesty, communal responsibility, and also in Akan tribe of Ghana, they have something they call Anansi, which is trickster spider. They use folktale to impart ethical teachings and life skills, which includes wisdom, pride, and consequences of one's actions. Likewise, in the Maasai culture from Kenya and Tanzania, they have traditional songs and chants that they accompany themselves with during initiation ceremonies of warriors. What they do use these things to do is to teach the young warriors the values of courage in battle, endurance, and the need to take responsibilities. Now, part of this heritage are artifacts. They are sculptures, they could be marks, textiles, and poetry that are imbued with meanings that can only be fully understood through oral traditions. One Yoruba proverb says, "Òrìṣà tí a ò fi hàn ọmọ ẹni kì í pẹ́ parun," meaning that a tradition that you don't show to the younger generations coming after you will not be long before it's forgotten. Now, this is why it is necessary for an oral tradition to be practiced, because the strength of oral tradition lies not in their content, but in their performative and participatory nature, which fosters communal engagement and emotional resonance. And this is why orality, oral tradition builds intergenerational bonding, and also diaspora communities can also maintain identity via through storytelling. Now, part of the challenges which I have mentioned earlier includes globalization and urbanization. According to UNESCO, a language dies every 2 weeks, with over 40% of the world's estimated 7,000 languages at risk of disappearing, taking with them the oral traditions embedded within them. Languages fade, traditions are abandoned, oral histories. All right, sir. Oral histories are being lost as communities migrate and adopt dominant cultural paradigms. Another challenge is educational STEM, which prioritize the Western style of education above oral tradition. You can imagine the roadside vocational workers who learn something within a number of years and they begin to repair our cars and other gadgets that we have. Now, one of the efforts by which we can preserve and safeguard our heritage is through academic conferences like this, where issues that pertain to our heritages are discussed. Now, recordings of events that feature traditions can also be kept and reserved for future generations to see. Thanks to the medias and those who are movie producers who are now retelling the stories of the ancient times through their productions. Then we also have people nowadays who have social media pages teaching their cultural values using their cultural languages. I want to recommend that there could be collaborative partnership between linguists, anthropologists, indigenous communities in order to have a documentation effort where their histories and heritages can be recorded and preserved in order to encourage the future generation. Let me conclude by saying that oral traditions remain indispensable, a vehicle for transmitting cultural values, historical memories, linguistic richness, and community identities across generations. This is why there is a need for an urgent and sustained commitment to the systematic research, comprehensive documentation, and widespread promotion of oral traditions. And such efforts should not merely aim at preserving them, but should embrace revitalizing them which enables traditions to adapt and thrive even in contemporary contexts. Safeguarding our heritage remains what we should be strategic and see of a necessity. Thank you for listening.
Our next presenter is, I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, so I don't suspect him, but it's Feride, who's going to be talking about indigenizing the educational system of Ethiopia. Feride, you have 10 minutes.
Okay. It's not ring.
Is that right? Okay. Then we're going to move to the next presenter. That is Temidayo David Oladipo. Was going to be talking on decolonizing local governance, exploring the rules of traditional rulers in Nigeria.
The chair, everyone, yeah. I'll be talking. My name is Temidayo David Oladipo. I'm talking on local governance, colonizing local government. And I'll be exploring hoping we could use traditional rulers instead of elected councilors. I have important issues in my but I'll be making a bit of that. Next slide, please. One thing is obvious with the local government in Nigeria, it is the fact that the many series of reforms that it has gone through over the years are pointed to the fact that there are many questions surrounding this operation, and it is not yet ruled. I mean, as far back as recently, when Tinubu became president, we were still talking about autonomy, we were still talking about financial autonomy, we were even talking about political autonomy and all that. And even despite the Supreme Court's judgment on the matter, governors are finding the ways around the judgment to ensure that local governments are tied permanently to the effort of the state government. Next slide, please. Although the fact is that there are many pressing issues in many key areas of national life in Nigeria and indeed Africa, this paper is about a specific area of Nigeria's national life. It is about the local government. Local government. There's a lot wrong with that area of national life, and it is evident in the many attempts to reform local governance. I've mentioned something slightly. Hello. Relying on Bewaji's work, this paper proposes the need to take critical intervention by considering indigenous political arrangements in place of the current local government structure or council. Reflection in the paper is directed at raising and addressing some questions regarding the role traditional institutions can play in contemporary Africa. What I intend to do is do a conceptual decolonization of the notion of local government. I claim that we have come to conceive local governance in line with Western-fostered ideas that our traditional institutions are critical in constructing a political system that works. And so far, they have been relegated to the background. Some section of the paper looked at colonialism and the making of the current local government arrangement. While I do not put the blame on colonialism, I am not saying that the pathology or whatever is wrong with local government currently is colonial. I am saying that what we have is that the fact that we had colonialism at all has changed all our institutions. The fact is that, as Keke would put it, it is to colonialism that we must look for any valid conceptualization of the unique nature of African politics. And that's illustrated by a whole lot of other scholars. It is with colonialism Actual indigenous political arrangements were ignored, while new ones were fostered on Africans. And the result, as Achebe puts it in his book, there was a country, a personal history of Biafra, is that Africans lost the habit of ruling themselves and had difficulty in running the new system that they inherited. Next. It goes without saying that as part of the political arrangement fostered on Nigeria, that the local government we have in Nigeria today comes from colonialism. Before the colonization of Nigeria, Nigeria had kingdoms, empires, and ways through which Nigerians governed themselves. While many reforms have been done to the local government, the fact remains that there is still a disconnect of the local government and the people. I mean, there's this gap. I mean, it's not, I'll get to the theoretical aspect, but people are not, the idea of the local government is that you have a government that's close to the grassroots, but that is not what is obtainable. The grassroots for which it is meant are not really feeling it, I mean, and they do not belong to it. This is the state intervention. Then, I move to the section that talks about the inadequacy of the current political arrangements, and then I look at literature. This work is built in part on the foundation that some scholars have laid by providing argument that there exists a body of knowledge, ideas, or beliefs about social political organization, which is coherent and systemic enough in the cultural heritage of Africa that can improve governance in contemporary argument. The argument entails the view that there are traditions, culture, values, belief systems, custom of traditional African states, which have constituted the guiding framework for livelihood or existence, social relations, and governance for centuries. African traditional states have systems, structured rules, sanctions, approaches, processes, procedures for the administration of justice, the maintenance of social order and cohesion, and the mediation of social relations between clans, communities, kinsmen, and family. Unfortunately, these have been watered down with colonialism. Next slide, please. Okay, like I said, these were jettisoned over time to evolve a system that is actually spring to Africa. And a whole lot of scholars have claimed that these institutions, being products of alien culture, I mean, the new institutions that we inherited, their values and their worldviews are not often understood even by Africans. I mean, part of the literature claims that we don't even understand how these institutions work. I mean, they do not, in the cultures from which they are coming, they evolve with those institutions. But here, they just got status to us, and then we are coping with a whole lot of mechanisms that we do not even understand. Unfortunately, also, it is contended in the literature that because alien institutions are not orthodoxly African, they are at best largely a pure mimicry of those of Western society. So even what we have in Africa are just a poor replica of what the Western institutions themselves have. Next slide, please. The next argument I pursued, which I can skip over, is to look at the fact that good governance, that we won't be able to get it right if you don't address local governance. Local governments, because there's a nexus between good governance, between local governance, democracy, and good governance. And then I'll explain that when I look at the theory. I should use about four theories, the paper is published from supporting theory. Participative theory of local government argues that the local government exists because people have that avenue to participate at the local level. And then democratic participative theory also says that, it is at that level that you get to train people who can be thrown into other aspects of national life and can do it well. The part of the problem with the local government, and it is that, you can come from Canada, you can come from UK and bring a whole lot of money, and then because you need a political ticket, people who are at the local government themselves, who are in those places, do not even get these tickets to even govern. So it is possible to have a local government chairman who does not even understand what the challenges of the local environment is and are not responsible to the people. And then I applied Bewaji's Epistemicide and also PPAK's argument about two public. Go on. Let's not. Okay. In applying JAI Bewaji's Epistemicide, it may be argued that colonial practices, particularly indirect roles, directly contributed to epistemicide in Nigeria by undermining indigenous governance and knowledge systems. Traditional rulers who embodied these systems were either subjugated or used as instruments of colonial administration, leading to the suppression of indigenous legal, political, and social knowledge. This historical trajectory clearly illustrates the killing or marginalization of knowledge embedded in traditional governance. Traditional institutions and rulers, of which there are kings, Bale, Yaloja, chiefs of various dimensions, were consequently made of no key importance in the administration of Nigeria. 2 more minutes. Okay, I should be able to finish. Oh, yeah. Bewaji's concept of epistemicide offers a profound analytical lens for understanding the systemic suppression of knowledge. It is not merely about the loss of information, but describes a coordinated plan of different actions and inactions aiming at the destruction of essential foundations of the life of national or racial groups, with the aim of annihilating the groups themselves, or making a nullity an identity, self-esteem, self-awareness, or corporate existence as autonomous or separate. This conceptualization, I like that epistemicide is the direct assault on the group's well-being and self-perception. Well, the conclusion and key argument. There is the need to revisit the traditional institutions and incorporate them into present scheme of governance, and not have them on the fringe as they presently have. They need to be at the core of governance. B is necessary because the people are closer to their primordial institution and can more readily make it accountable. As PPAK's theory of two public hold, people don't misbehave in the primordial public as they do in the civic public. This requires that the rulers that are traditional to the people are used instead of the present elected local government council officials. People at the local government level can more readily hold them accountable. It is a tall call to make, yes, but it is doable. Thank you.
Okay, and then the next presenter is Ishola Oladiyan, study tracking an Orthodox or alternative medicine, traditional Arabic and Islamic medicine. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adeola Selim Olaniyan. I'm presenting a paper titled Orthodox or Alternative Medicine, Traditional Arabic and Islamic Medicine in Nigeria. So I want to first of all reiterate that the original title of this paper, when I submitted it, was the Orthodox and Alternative Medicine, Traditional Arabic and Islamic Medicine in an Ultimate Search for its stolen status. So having established this, I want to reiterate that this paper was inspired and benefited greatly from Bewaji's concept of epistemicide. So by epistemicide, etymologically or conceptually scrutinized, it has two words: epistem, a way of knowing, and side, killing that way of knowing. So by that way, we can say epistemicide is a deliberate, institutionalized killing of or condemning a people's way of knowing. So this will take me back to epistemology and the controversy between the authenticity of science as the ideal of knowledge. So why everything other than science is pseudo, is considered not authentic. So in the history of knowledge, I mean epistemology, there is an age-old controversy about what constitutes truth, belief, and just as Socrates raised those 3 questions, which brings about the number of theories of truth. But I will bring in Jonathan Dancy's social epistemology, whereby he was making the sense that, or he was arguing that if a body of knowledge sustain a people as the yardstick of maintaining their life, this knowledge remains valid, irrespective of what an external person says to it. And I can see that Bewaji Ayotunde also built on this Jonathan Dancy's social epistemological stance, whereby he imported Yoruba principle of honor or word. So if this thing works for me, then it amounts to knowledge. So this becomes the starting point for his epistemicide, before he now took that concept on his own by establishing the concept epistemicide, attacking the external way of looking down into the particularly Africans. So as they had nothing before they encounter the continent called Africa. This includes their language, their food, their culture, their way of dancing, and of course their medical system. So that being said, let me now go back to what we have as prophetic medicine. So I want to disabuse something in this perspective as well. When we hear prophetic medicine, what we easily come to mind is a kind of healing that is characterized by reading a part of the Holy Quran, doing ablution before reciting it, essentially reciting the Quran in Arabic in the name of healing a particular ailment. That is what a layman will easily decipher what prophetic medicine is all about. But this is me telling you that when we say prophetic medicine, is name is used to encapsulate what we had as traditional Arabic medicine before Prophet Muhammad. And what are those things Prophet Muhammad authenticate, approved, or even by the way of silence, that such a medicine holds, or it is in tandem with his religious preach or religious belief? Then it's also go further to talk about what we have as Islamic medicine that took its birth in the golden age of Islam. So at the golden age of Islam, immediately after the death of the Holy Prophet, so Islam became a body that taking some preaches from or advices from the hadith of the Holy Prophet that says you people should search for knowledge, even if you can go to the extent of going to China or anywhere in the world. So wherever you see knowledge, you are indebted to picking it. So they were informed by some of the hadiths like this, and as a result, they stood up aggressively, searching for knowledge from different places. this is what we consider as Islamic golden age that enforced a kind of knowledge searching, knowledge gathering, including medicine. So this is where we have so many brilliant Muslims coming on board. So we can begin to be naming them, but very important or prominent among them is Ibn Sina, so Latinized as Avicenna. So he came on board into Islamic medicine, or what I should call, I would prefer to call a prophetic medicine, like never before. So having acquired the what was on ground in terms of Arabic medicine, then the prophetic medicine. So he embarked on research, scientific research, seriously committed research. So into medical arena until decisively his decision. I mean, he wrote a book. I want to leave this place because of I'm sorry. I'm trying to move away from the noise of the generator. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's one of the Nigeria factors. So because there was no power, so the person was in an attempt to power the house with the generator, which is somehow noisy. So now, I'm sorry. So by the time he came on board,
He has a consciousness. He was conscious of the generator.
Actually, yeah. Forgive us. Okay. Okay. While we're waiting for him to sort out his technical issues and rejoin us, when he does that, we'll give him maybe a couple of minutes to wrap up his presentation. But for now, we'll take a visit done by Fair or Latin Fair. He's from Regional University of Cambridge, he gave us an entire investigating epistemic bias against women in Yoruba thought.
Yeah, she has unmuted herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Modu Modu, and I'll be looking at investigating epistemic bias against women in the Yoruba thought system. The work draws largely from Mirinda Africa's notion of epistemic injustice. And according to her, according to Frika, she defined epistemic injustice as the harm that is done to someone in their capacity as knowers. And our work stands, our foundational work provides the framework to understanding how a person or group can be unfairly discredited in their capacity as knowers. So that is when we're talking about knowledge, acquisition of knowledge, production of knowledge, some persons can be unfairly treated compared to others. Okay? And there are two forms of epistemic injustice which the work will talk about, which is the first one is testimonial injustice. And testimonial injustice occurs when prejudice causes a hearer to give a deflated level of credibility to a speaker's words. That is, we see very good instances of this, in everyday life, even in the Yoruba society, where they say, if a woman should talk, the words does not hold weight compared to when a male talks, because it is believed that she's emotional, she's, women are irrational, and so on. So that's the first part of epistemic injustice, which is a testimonial injustice that causes a hearer. So the person who is listening to the speaker, gives a deflated level of credibility, gives less credibility. In fact, gives almost no credibility to a speaker's words based on their identity. In this case, based on the identity, based on the fact that the speaker is a woman. And then there's also hermeneutical injustice. And this occurs at a prior stage. That is when a gap in collective interpretative resources puts someone at an unfair disadvantage when it comes to making sense of their social experiences. So what hermeneutical injustice is saying, in essence, is that the gaps in a language, for instance, could make somebody who experienced who had a particular experience, and they know that particular experience is an unjust kind of experience, but they are unable to express that. And even when they try to express it, the speaker, the hearer or their audience will be unable to make sense out of what they are trying to express, because what they are trying to express does not, exist in the collective interpretative resources. For instance, now in most developing countries, even in the Yoruba society, for instance, let's talk about marital rape. Imagine a woman going to a maybe police station or having a court case that her husband had raped her. Because there's the concept of marital rape seems to be non-existent, in our collective language, or in our collective way of interpreting, of understanding reality. Then it feels like that, in fact, the speaker might be, the one who has experienced, the woman might be unable to put it into words, but she knows that she has just experienced an unjust situation. She might be unable to express herself, and the audience too, even when she does, the audience might be unable to understand, because they feel like, oh, you're married, how can you be raped, but you're married? So this is the second aspect of testimonial injustice. Now, investigating I mean, this is the second aspect of epistemic injustice. Now, investigating it in the Yoruba thought system, we see that prior to colonialism, the epistemic injustice wasn't this pronounced before the advent of colonialism, which really did the Yoruba thought system, dirty because the colonialists introduced a number of things that were hitherto not existent in Yoruba before. Because, for instance, in education, they gave priority to the male children, than the women. So yes, so thank you, everyone. I would like to stop here. I'm actually a bit strong. I'm just managing, just recuperating from fever. So I like to stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Oluka. You did great, by the way. So, you're a great young woman. Thanks for that brilliant presentation. While we're waiting for Salim to join us, I'm just going to use this opportunity to write some broad reflections on Professor Bewaji's work as a philosopher, as a cultural historian. Now, I am not a philosopher. My primary training is in literary and cultural science. So I must confess that I feel like an impostor. I feel a bit out of place when I'm making very broad generalizations about the work of really renowned professor of art and philosophy. Now, I first met Professor Bewaji in the summer of 23 while in the fellowship here at the Institute of African Studies at the University of Lagos. My very first and casual observations of him caught a few notable things. He hadn't an office like most visiting scholars from the global north, like us. He had office hours on the open lounge at the topmost floor of the IADS building, and often spent time on his own reading and responding to emails or engaged in other professional duties. He seemed like a man alienated from his environment and leading a very lonely existence. I say seemed because I was wrong in my initial impressions of him. It wasn't quite long before I realized that he had a more serious, fun-loving, and sociable side that made him such a great company. But also in meetings, public lectures, and other formal academic events at the Institute, his comments, contributions, and thought-provoking questions reveal something more profound about his personality and scholarship. This was a great thinker and teacher. What carried out, I'm sort of trying to make sense of why he found this quiet space for himself, where I thought he was alienated from his environment. But it later became clear to me that this was a great thinker and teacher who had carved out a space for himself to maintain his sanity, continue his intellectual work as a consummate scholar, while quietly witnessing the idiocies of exaggerated egos, relentless passive aggression, egregious mediocrity, and an annoying culture of diffidence by both students and faculty playing out around him. These travesties unfolding around him made him uncomfortable and often got him into trouble when he tried to address them. So I see why much of his work, much of his ideas expressed in narratives of struggles, devolve around what Wolishinika had termed the cycle of idiocies in Africa, whether political, economic, or cultural. There is no doubt that Professor Bewaji is a first-rate scholar capable of defending his ideas anywhere in the world, however controversial they may be. The evidence is already there in the quality, the depth and originality of his scholarship, the profoundness of his ideas, the smoothness of his writing, and the very intimidating barrage of theoretical pyrotechnics he displays in his work. My point being that I'm not trying to defend the man can defend himself. There's no point doing that. But the salience of his work for me is his prescience, the futurity embedded in his work, his preternatural ability to mobilize philosophical truths, to read ahead of history. Let me provide just one example from narratives struggle to portray my point here. Commenting on the theater of cruelty now associated with neoliberal globalization and Western postmodernity, he asserts that, quote, unfolding events in the world now show that there could be no future for the weak, the poor, or the gentle, in which the humanity of the rich and powerful can be relied upon to provide human conditions of existence for all the human beings in the world, unquote. Note that this work was published in 2012, more than a decade before Achille Mbembe published Brutalism last year in 2024, when Adam Siwa released Cruelty in the Point in 2021. And Henry Giroud talked about neoliberalism as fostering a theater of cruelty devoid of compassion for the weak and the poor. I'm saying, these are the people who are now talking about the culture of brutality that Professor Bewaji spoke about sort of a decade and a half ago, and they have been here as the biggest scholars who are documenting contemporary modernity. In fact, what narratives of struggles remind me of is that perspicacious analysis of European modernity provided by David Harvey, in which he surmises neoliberalism and all contemporary global postmodernity as the reinvention of colonial repertoires of imperial violence, saturated by violent extortion, duplicity, and unconscionable greed. What we have ended up with, Professor Bewaji so eloquently demonstrating his work, is not just the global political, economic, and cultural order that has devalued what he calls the notion of humanity, grounded in crude or crass individualism and moral decadence. The real tragedy of this mindless but thriving international system that we call global modernity and neoliberal globalization is that it has blinded us all from recognizing how, according to him, it masks the destructive or the productive, packages the crooked as the ideal, glosses the debilitating as the creative, and reifies the abnormal, deviant in many aspects of our existence as the norm, right? So you see this day when they follow who sabi who, it just means follow the person who's very honest. You know, those kinds of things. You hear people talk about it. It's that kind of idea. We celebrate freely and idiocy and those kinds of things. Ignorant, incompetent political and cultural elites of Africa and the African diaspora continue to traverse foreign state houses and corporate headquarters seeking for ideas on how to grow and build on the very political or policy ingredients that have not only left their own people indigent, but have left the Western world in shambles, struggling to deal with the paradoxical outcomes of what has been centuries of horrifying violence of people and their natural resources all over the world. I don't need to give very many examples. See what's been happening in the Niger Delta. All of the companies drilling crude oil for the past 60 years are owned by Nigerians, right? If there's anything that Professor Bewaji's work has taught us, it is a simple idea that the notion of development, or that a notion of development devoid of moral foundations, is counterproductive. And it is here that he prefers an African notion of development that ought to attract the attention of not just scholars, but any well-meaning leader in Africa and the Black diaspora. It is a notion of development that focuses on and addresses what he calls, quote, the human element. That is, the fulfilled, contented person living in a humane environment with other humans who look out for each other, support each other, and treat each other with respect, kindness, and love. In other words, you can build a cool city, you can build a continental hotel, you can do trees that under the ground. If all of that is not happening in an environment where people are treated with respect, with compassion, so yeah, that's not development. In essence, any concept of development devoid of the ethics of compassion and care for the other is un-African. The view of development that Bewaji proposes reminds me of the moral foundation of the African notion of common good, or what Monsame Molefe has termed the African conception of development. Linking Ubuntu as a moral philosophy to the discourse of development, Molefe has argued that development has an ethics underpinned by three crucial elements: the good life, a just society, and a commitment to the environment. He grounds his conception of development in Ubuntu as a moral theory, understood as a particular arrangement of society in ways favorable for human flourishing. So the pursuit of human flourishing or thriving, especially as prompted through intellectual work, has been very central to Professor Bewaji's scholarship. In a moment of dire historical tensions and seismic social change such as we're experiencing here in Nigeria, in Africa globally, but also globally, true philosophy, or what we might call theory, is more critical than affirmative. That's the job, is not to go around so many places, we are doing well. That's not the job of scholars. It is this kind of cultural criticism that is highly attentive to material social conditions, enveloping and shaping the lives of ordinary people in everyday life. That Professor Bewaji has championed and practiced for the past 14 years as an African philosopher and a global thinker. And in that body of work, he has distinguished himself as the voice of the voiceless and the disempowered. And in focusing his research skills on the lives of those on the margins of global culture, that is Africa, the Caribbean, and the Black diaspora, and retrieving and mainstreaming their struggles and accomplishments, Professor Bewaji has done vital internal work. The reason I say this is because, as Terrell Eagleton, that famous literary theorist, noted, margins can be unspeakably painful places to be. And there are few more honorable tasks for students of culture than help create space in which the dumped and disregarded can find a talk. So one of my concluding remarks, I promise people I'm not going to talk too much, both in terms of breadth and quality, Professor Bewaji's scholarship is undoubtedly one of the most profound and audacious work on contemporary African thought or philosophy, if you like, culture and society. The intellectual force of the scholarship is deep-rooted in the extraordinary ways in which it astutely triangulates high-power Euro-American theory with old-style British empiricism, combined with the most salient dimensions of African philosophy. Professor Bewaji is at home with flamboyant Euro-American philosophy as he is with the webs of Africa's front history and its aftermath. But the uses to which he invokes and applies philosophy or theory and African history and thought is what differentiates him from his work as a consummate scholar of the first order. While his scholarship is robust, sophisticated, and rigorous, it is the humanitarian essence to which he puts all of this theoretical, historical, and textual resources that mark him out as a humanist. And this is the real point of making, that as a philosopher, he is essentially not just a cultural historian and philosopher, but in many ways his work marks him out as a humanist. In his academic work, theory and history have never overshadowed praxis. However much value any popular theoretical resource might be, if it doesn't serve the purpose to make a strong commentary on the human condition, especially as an intervention in the pursuit of social transformation that brings about the betterment of life for the less privileged amongst us, such a theoretical tool has never held any fascination for Professor Bewaji. So what the totality of his work represents, I would argue, is a strong example of the second wave of the redisciplinarization of the humanities, in which the cultural sciences, including literary and cultural studies, but also philosophy, have been called upon in the 1960s moving forward to account for what is happening to ordinary people, to respond to the cries of those who are being preyed upon by the forces of neoliberal capitalism and crude power in the era of brutalism. Professor Bewaji represents the disciplinary response to the clarion call for social justice education and research in the humanities, or what I would call the cultural sciences. Motivated by the view that scholarship must be relevant to society, the scholarship and teachings are indicative of a lifelong commitment to exposing both the way forward for oppressed people to understand how the instruments, the systems, the ideologies, the processes, the epistemologies, the metaphysics, including the conceptual foundations of development, all add up to compel development of proper approaches to issues of governance and society. So it is for this reason that I wholeheartedly choose him as my friend, as my mentor. So I'm going to give him two questions, and then I will end. So, Professor Bewaji, given the phenomenal accomplishments of young people in cultural production in the continent, would you consider rethinking the view you expressed at the beginning of your book, where Africa is essentially framed and theorized as the ground zero for the development? And number two, is it time to move away our analysis from leadership to followership or citizenship? Because it seems to me that our leadership has refused to be created because we've never held them accountable. Thank you. Okay, so we have, is the other young man back up? No, no, okay. So yeah, we have plenty of time. The panel is supposed to end at 2:50. So essentially we have about 25 minutes. That's plenty of time for questions, for comments, and for contributions. I see hands already up. Yes, okay. So, but what I'm going to do is, I think, to give Professor Bewaji about 10 to 15 minutes to respond to the 4 presentations, and then I will take questions and comments from the floor directed at him. Remember, this panel is not about us, it's about him. So your questions should be directed to the man, not to us, okay?
We have one online.
Yes. So, yeah. Okay. So, if you could please comment or, yeah.
Wow. This is significant. All right. Do I need to, I can stand up?
No, you don't have to. That's not
I must thank the individuals who conceived this particular recognition. You know, that the accomplices are here. Yemi Ademowo is there. That is the leader of the gang. Noah Balogun is there. You know, and Rotimi Omosudu is there. And I believe the gentleman with the heart, Temidayo, is also there. I want to thank all of them for thinking that my efforts deserve engagement. is not recognition that is the critical issue. It is engagement that I consider most important. Engagement in the sense that it makes you feel that, it seems some people are actually listening or reading or interested in what you are saying. Because as we know, most of us in the academy, the goal is to become a professor. And once you become a professor, some of my colleagues will say, my work is done. The only thing I'll be reading now are newspapers. And I don't have to work hard again. But when you have a situation where you have people you look at who are ahead of you, who are in their 80s and 90s, and they are still working very hard. And then you find that in your own little corner, people listen and people take your efforts seriously. That, I believe, is very profound. And I want to thank the organizers of this forum. I will start with what Paul II, that's what we call him during the fellowship. Well, the history of that, I wouldn't go into it. But Paul II has given me two challenges with which I want to start. The first is that contemporary creatives, let me use the word creatives for them, especially those who are producing, within the arts and in various areas of whether academic or entertainment and all those things. They are doing a lot of work. And incidentally, my first book, Beauty and Culture, is one of the first full-length, materials in aesthetics relating to Africa. What many of us may not appreciate is that a lot is wrong with how we have understood what we do and what our colleagues, especially those who are aspiring either to be academics or public intellectuals, that they are doing. And as such, we need to take our efforts very seriously. In the 80s, there was a particular period when people were being sacked from universities, were doing what they were not paid to teach. Okay? I don't know if anybody remembers that period. When especially the humanities, those in the humanities, the arts and the social sciences, were told that they didn't contribute to baking bread. And because they didn't contribute to baking bread, it means that they were useless. Within the last 10 years, we also witnessed something similar to that. When history, various languages, the Yoruba language, was removed from the curriculum in our secondary, in our primary schools, without knowing the kinds of disaster that we are cultivating. And I tell people that even as hard as globalization and consumerism and capitalism has done, a lot is invested in arts and culture in Europe and America. A lot of resources are devoted to promoting those things because they know that part of the goal of conquest is to conquer the culture of other peoples. And, the Arabs invest a lot in it. Europeans invest a lot in it. The church, represented by the Catholic, the Anglican, and the rest of them, they take it very seriously. The destruction of indigenous knowledge systems, indigenous cultures is a first order business. And as such, those of us who are subalterns, who come from the margins, as Paul has said, we need to always re-examine ourselves and the possibility that we may go extinct. We may still be human beings, but we are human beings who are extinct because we have no culture, we have nothing. The first order of business is to destroy our religions, destroy our languages, destroy our ways of life. I mean, we went somewhere yesterday, and all I saw in the store was Indomie. Indomie. The kinds of diseases we are going to be witnessing in the next 10, 15 years in Nigeria will be so strange because the kinds of diet that our youth are feeding on are so horrible. These are processed, more or less plastic that they are eating. And then they won't know where the cancers and the various things are coming from. And because they have moved away from the herbs, they are no longer using the herbs. It means also that the ways of checkmating some of these diseases are absent. So what you have said is that the International Center of Excellence in Environmental Humanities, which I proposed, and which Federal University Lokoja embraced, is one of my responses of creating a forum, okay, an avenue for the interrogation of some of these challenges, bringing all of us together to begin a re-examination of what we do and how we do it. Whether you are a linguist, whether you are, a cultural something or whatever you are, there is a need for all of us to begin a re-examination of the fundamental assumptions and presuppositions of what we do. If we don't do that, that's a problem. The second question that you raised is the role of followers in holding leadership to account. Now, I could use Karl Marx, who talked about petty bourgeois. We know that the masses of the people need guidance. And in our indigenous societies, that was the role of the elders. Those who were seasoned, that was why our people had the lodges. Okay, the lodges, many people misunderstood what was a lodge. It wasn't a secret society where, especially, in Ogbomoso, they were having the Oro festival. Some people say, oh, they are marginalizing the women. No, they are not. Because in Yoruba land, in many Yoruba cities, they had a male king who was not the husband of the female queen. Okay? In other words, females have their own queen who looked after the affairs of women. And then you had a king who looked after the affairs of men. And when there was a collective problem, they all came together because now this is a communal issue. But we have lost all of those things, and people don't understand that naturally there are certain things that people need to do at certain times because we now follow this thing we call, modernity, globalization, and all that. So leadership cannot be held to account by people who have been condemned into ignorance. Look at what has happened to our educational system. The kinds of primary schools, public primary schools that I attended is absolutely not there now. And the so-called, what do you call it now? Private schools. They are glorified places where people buy examination questions for children, where children are coached to pass exams. All kinds of things are going on. And that means that when you have a community of followers who are uninformed, who don't know what is going on in the world, who don't know the circumstances of their poverty, where their poverty is coming from, they are not going to be able to hold anybody to account. And that is the challenge which our universities have failed to address. Our universities are like oases, they are more or less oases within the communities in which they live. Their students don't know what is happening in the community around them. They don't live like people around them. And when they get out, it becomes a problem for them to be useful either to themselves or to the society. And these are serious problems which we need to address. A number of things were said which I believe I need to say one or two things about. We always repeat this saying that Africa is an oral society. Okay? That Africa had no literary culture. But Africa produced the first set of rights. Okay? And it is there. There is no society that does documentation or writing except as are seen to be necessary. Okay? Nobody goes to start learning this and that if there is no utility for it. And as far as African societies needed documentation, they did. They did. That was hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics was one of the first systems of writing in the world. In the Congo Basin, the bones, where you have the calendar, okay, is more than 50,000 years old. The whole thing that you call the Old Testament is not older than 6,000 or 7,000 years. How is it that the children are going to be telling the history of their ancestors? Most of us, we don't borrow ourselves sense. Okay? As my youth would now say, you need to borrow yourself sense in order to understand that what we are doing is absolutely impossible. It cannot lead to anywhere. Okay? Chemical engineering was there, more than 100,000 years ago. In Zimbabwe, what is chemical engineering? Making paint. Paint is not a simple science. For you to make paint, and it endures, in the Tassili Desert, which is the Sahara, okay, evidence abounded there to show that our people moved around, for a long period of time before the migration and dispersal from Africa. Okay. So the next point that I'll make is, I don't know if I'm responding to everything, but I'm just trying to capture a few things. Now, I will link the point that was made, which is about the judicial system, the digital system, and also the element of, the fact that you have testimonies. The presenter spoke about epistemic injustice, okay? Epistemic injustice, also testimonial injustice, and so on. Well, I want to suggest that some of the things that we are engaging, we meet the conversation at a point, and we engage it. What went behind before, we don't engage it. Okay? In Yoruba culture, there was never any time when the woman's testimony was rushed aside. When you brought people together, in an environment of investigative to find out what happened in the society, serious matter. Everybody, their views are held seriously. They are regarded serious. Actually, children are never expected to lie. Unlike our children who have been fed through the YouTube and all those things, whose first diet is lying. Okay? It was never expected like that. So I'm suggesting that, in essence, I want to just thank, everybody, because I know that if you allow me, I could go on, because there are so many strands to what we have been debating over the last couple of days. I want to thank everybody.
We're going to take 3 questions, please.
Directed at the presenter.
Yeah. Please ask a question. Don't do another lecture. I beg you. Ask a question, simple question. Okay, number 1.
Number 1. So, local governments and the what do you want to see in local government, or what do you expect before local government can be involved or organize it? Because I saw in the paper, and it seems that you are baptized with 2 nations over the democratic government. So how accountable are the kings compared with democratic government?
Okay, question number 2. I'll take you.
Thank you.
So Dr. Oladipo, I think the phrase in your statement is not yet full thank God that I'm a spiritual person. I don't know how I know you are talking about Swahili language care, but I want to recommend that you related to future because your topic on conceptualizing the ground complex and you're able to recognize we should not go to
Okay, that's your comment. I need a woman this time around, not just men.
I identify.
My question is, I think that you read about how your topic is talking about involving the elder.
Yeah.
And elder.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of people talking about it. Not meaning for this one. Sure, I knew that. That would be the keep we use them going to be that good. No. Because even the lowest of the lowest now, they won't have.
Okay, so let's take those two and then we'll go to the second.
Okay, to the rule thing, that's because it's philosophy. I mean philosophy. A lot of people are trying to use the word rule for understand not trying to adopt any linguistic thing. It's okay. However, our principle as it came to the people, and almost the same thing with what so my observation at Village Square, people are closer to their I'm not talking of these glorified things that we now have. I know that people have access to their king, and I know that apart from the king, we forget that there are family heads, there are communal heads, there are clan heads, who are part of the traditional system, who held the king accountable. And like I said, a whole lot of time because each king are among them. Many of us have not seen a senator, many of us have not encountered a local government chairman for a whole lot of whatever. But not so the king. Not so a whole lot of traditional leaders. Not so a whole lot of traditional community leaders. Many of them are at home with their people. And so I'm just hoping. I mean, it's a conjecture. I want to believe that I'm just making a proposal. That people, because they are among the people, it's easy for the people to hold them more accountable. A lot of time when they have this annual thing that they call town hall, whatever, and then they contribute money for the project. Those money don't get it. Because the people are there to monitor those money. It is money that comes from Abuja that gets me. You understand? If you steal a dime in the village, you will see the consequences. So the proposal is why not let us use these people? I mean, these people are governing us long before we started this elected local government chairman, blah, 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 and then taking it away. And that does not also take away the fact that there will be a process of accountability coming from the government, at the same time, as well as doubling that accountability measure with the people who are on ground. Oh, so if you say that, I'm from Efalaya, and say, your king has collected 200 million for a project, this project, blah, 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 blah. I want to believe that kind of money will not be invested. I mean, if the local government collects 200 million, I'm left. A whole lot of people are planning also that transport. The chief, the clan head, and a whole lot of things. It makes us plead another set for corruption, no doubt. But the fact is that some level of accountability, we know people in the community now, like how many you said we can stone people. We now know people we can stone among us.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so that's all platform. From a political science perspective, if one should ask that what were those partners that
Please one out, I can't hear.
that led to the erosion of traditional rulers functions and all of that. Won't be thinking of the absence of their roots in constitution, constitutional development, all through 1960 to the 1976 local government reform that totally wiped out traditional rulers, and even the rise of democracy, that now we are focused more on people we elect in positions, unlike the traditional rulers who are not elected. So take all of these factors from political science perspective. How can we still use this Epistemicide to explain this? It looks clearer as a factor to how traditional rulership has eroded in the history of the country. So it's important, how do we use that framework to explain this factor?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm following and trying to apply it to it did a whole lot of modern work, but I'm saying that these ideas can be taken to, governance, and we will start. Constitutions can always be amended, at the national level, I'm saying that once we begin to push this narrative and argument about the fact that traditional institutions are key to governance of the people, we can then begin to also push for reform. At some point, they will do this, and then we can then say, okay, let's go back to this.
As a form of intervention, you wouldn't forget that one of the tenets of epistemicide is also what we have as internalized belief that says that epistemicide is not fully a result of external forces like colonial language information, but also stems from internalized belief that indigenous knowledge is inferior.
So I do not think that the problem is with the people. I think the problem is with the actors.
Sorry, we are running out of time.
2 minutes left.
We have a presenter who wasn't here when his name was mentioned. Sorry, let me just say, who is the getter? Oh my God! Yeah, no. Who is the getter? Dr. Akore as a first country. The reason that first.
The question is there. There's also it needs to be this script as well as script marking in Southern Africa. Plus, the use of the emojis today is simply a latter-day rehash of ancient hieroglyphics. I think he's trying to make a connection between the hieroglyphics and emojis we use nowadays. Just like it's like a rehash of. Is it a question? I think he's trying to make a contribution. Yeah.
Okay. All right, everybody. I want to thank you for your participation in this panel, and I also want to thank our Professor Emeritus for your comments, responses to questions. We have really gained a lot for bringing you to this panel, and for being with us is Tuesday already. So, Prof, we will continue to engage you either through email or physically, because we still want to learn a lot from you. Thanks for coming here, and thank you all.
In addition to that, we also realize that some of you participated in our sessions, although it's something abstract, but you want to say something about Bewaji. We are planning a volume, an edited volume, the one of Professor Bewaji. So we have one of us here. We're going to want us to add you to a platform where we give information about the next book, about the panel, our session. Please put down your name.